Welcome back to EVA's studio. It's Melissa and Craig Outhier, who writes for, did I say that correctly?
You did, very good.
Thank you. Who writes for Phoenix Magazine. And I've known you for a long time here in Phoenix, and I had no idea what an excellent writer you were until I read that article.
Well, thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
I had to put it down at one point because I got so emotional reading it. And the article I'm talking about is the article about Dina Shacknai, the mother of Max Shacknai, who died in Coronado in San Diego. What is this, a couple years ago now?
It was 1 year ago in July.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. We heard all the salacious news about Rebecca Zahau, who was also found in the house a couple days after Max's accident, hanged and naked, and you know, that was the big mystery. But I never really heard about Max, and I didn't know too much about what happened there. I just figured, like everybody else, that was a very tragic accident, and that was pretty much the end of it.
Yeah, well, so I think that was the thing. That what happened to Rebecca Zahau dominated the conversation. And I think Dina Shacknai felt like her son's passing, the incident that took his life, kind of got overlooked because it wasn't nearly as salacious.
I never heard anything. I never saw her being interviewed during this time.
And that was that was her choice. She didn't want to go before the media.
I'm sure she was devastated.
Son. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that to me was the more interesting part of this story. Not what might have happened to Max, although that was very tragic. It was what Dina was going through. She didn't talk to the media. She went back to her house in Paradise Valley and basically, in her own words, became a recluse. She didn't talk to anybody. She, family and friends would visit her, but she was struggling mightily, living in this big house where her son had spent so many wonderful years. And this place is just, it's haunted by ghosts.
It's like a shrine to him.
Absolutely.
I mean, even when he was alive, there were so many pictures of him, and this was her only child, so she really built a world around him.
She really did. She created a wonderland for him, and when he was torn from her life, there wasn't, much left for her, at least from her point of view. That was incredibly sad to think about. But also, what happened to her afterwards was inspiring. In April, she had a remembrance for her son. She invited all of his friends over to the house, family members, and she let them say goodbye to him. It was really, I went with my wife, who went to grad school with her. That's how the story kind of came about.
Oh, wow.
And it was beautiful. And that to me was, watching her kind of pull herself out of that pit of despair was very inspiring. And I wanted to tell that story. And then through the course of that, of course, she talked about what happened to her that week in Coronado when her son had the accident, and some of her suspicions and some of her misgivings about Rebecca Zahau kind of came to light through telling that story. And of course, that's very compelling as well.
So through her despair, through her grief, I think maybe she was able to pull herself out of that by forming this nonprofit that she has now.
Right. I think at a certain point she confronted the fact that her son wasn't going to be part of her life anymore, but she wanted to build his legacy. She wanted to find some meaning from that, and that's where the motivation for Max's house came from.
So what exactly does she want to do in addition to Max's house to prevent maybe something that happened to Max?
Well, I think in terms of her own experience, if she had known, what happened was when her ex-husband, Jonah Shacknai, who's the CEO of Medicis, started dating and living with Rebecca Zahau, Dina had some misgivings right off the bat. She did her own internet search. She didn't turn up anything. She discovered that Rebecca Zahau had a shoplifting conviction, some other things that gave her pause. Rebecca Zahau was also married at the time that she was.
That never came out. I never ever heard that in the news.
Right, and it wasn't something that she was aware of, and or Rebecca even told her when they met for coffee in September of 2010. So those things, that kind of cumulative, all those facts made her do her own background check, and she tried to lay a ground. According to her, she and Jonah Shacknai had some ground rules. Rebecca Zahau wouldn't go to school events. She wouldn't take Max, the son, to an airport or to state lines. So they kind of put this framework in place. So there was already some suspicions there. Dina feels like if there had already been a mechanism for finding out and engaging Rebecca, that maybe it would have benefited Max in the long run in some way.
So the mechanism that she'd like to see would do what?
I think at this point, you'd have to ask her specifically, and she already has, the foundation sounds like it's really gaining momentum. She has Lisa Budinger, who's a local fundraiser and is involved with nonprofits, is now the CEO over there. I think what they want to do is just initially is start a public information, a public awareness campaign to encourage people to put forth or to construct this kind of post-marriage mechanism for
contracts.
Right, exactly. And then beyond that, I'm not sure in terms of what they're doing legally, but that's it.
So if you and I were divorced and we both had custody of our child,
right.
I could, if you started dating someone and I didn't know about this person, then I could ask for a background check?
Or it would already be in place, because of the marriage agreement or the, what do you call it?
Parenting
plan.
Right,
exactly.
when we divorce, right.
The language.
So it would be kind of automatic then to have a background check on anybody living in the house with the child or anybody having access to the child.
Any adult.
Which makes sense because if I just go and ask for that, it might look like I'm paranoid or I'm being, a biatch or whatever.
Sure.
But this way, it's kind of a mechanism that's in place and it's just a transparency that everybody, all the parties agree to.
Even if you love the person, even if they're like a beautiful person, you have no suspicions, they would already be there to, the mechanism would already be there to do the background check.
Are you surprised how much news coverage came? Which came first? I mean, was Dina going to come out and have all these press conferences? Or did your story come out in Phoenix Magazine and then cause all this?
I think before I even approached her to do the article, she was already thinking that, she already had the plans for the foundation in place. And I was thinking she already had a media plan, at least was generating one. She hadn't hired a publicist yet. She obviously had a lawyer, but she hadn't brought on people on board her nonprofit yet. So she was already thinking that way, but I think I was the first journalist to approach her. So it was
really took off in the media and gave her a lot of publicity. You can read some of the story at phoenixmag.com.